Okay, Ipswich Town fans, we are less than 1 month away from the winter transfer window. Here are 5 players Ipswich Town must sign in January. Hello and welcome back to the Harvey Bell YouTube channel. I cannot believe that it is that time of the year again. But if you want to stay up to date with all the January happenings at Ipswich Town, then make sure to press subscribe down below. We are on the road to 1.5 thousand subscribers. Also, like the video and jump into the comment section. Let's have a little bit of a discussion. Where do you think Ipswich Town need to improve in the transfer window? What positions are we currently lacking in? And most importantly, who would you sign to fill those positions? Number 1 on my list is Imran Louza at Watford. Now, currently, Azor Matasiwa for me is our best midfielder, but there is no direct replacement for him. He's the man in the middle who puts the hard tackles in. He's here, there and everywhere. But if he was to get injured, I don't really see that we've got a like-for-like replacement. I don't think Taylor does his job. I don't think Kajus does his job. I don't think Nunez does. But I think Imran Louza would. Now, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know how much I rave about Louza and all the championship predictions, and whenever we mention Watford, he is a player that gets around everywhere. When he played at Portman Road earlier in the season in the 1-1 draw between the two clubs, for me he was man of the match, and he really does lead by example for Watford. At the time of recording, he scored 6 goals for the Hornets and registered 4 assists, and we're not that far into the season yet, and he's been doing it for a couple of years in Hertfordshire now. So much so that they actually had to reject a bid from Lokomotiv Moscow in the summer, around £5.2 million. So he's clearly a player that is worthwhile. We've spoke a lot throughout the season about losing the leadership in midfield from Sam Morsey. And as I say, Azor's done a good job. But somebody like Louza, who wears the captain's armband for Watford, would go a long way to cementing that leadership in the middle of the park. As I say, I don't really know how much he'd cost, just given the fact that they did reject a significant bid in the summer. But I'm sure that Ipswich Town could muster up the money if we really wanted to. I couldn't think that he'd cost any more than around £10 million. There's probably some lower end Premier League clubs that I can imagine are interested. But he's certainly somebody that I think Ipswich Town should have on their list of players to sign this January. Next up, we've got Ciaran Brown. He is a defender from Oxford United, played against him fairly recently, but he's a left-sided centre-back, and that is crucial here because Elkan Baggett is the only really backup that we've got on the left-hand side to Jacob Greaves. I know Greaves and Kipre tend to rotate a lot, but Greaves is the only real natural left-footer, and I can't imagine that Baggett isn't going to be looking for a loan move elsewhere. So I think it's imperative that we do look for a new left-sided centre-back. The good thing about Ciaran Brown as well is the fact that he can play left-back if needed to, and with Connor Townsend injured and going to be injured for the rest of the season, there is no direct cover for Leif Davis. Now, it's not like for like. I couldn't really imagine Brown flying up the left-hand side, but he would certainly be a solid option at left-back and somebody that could stop opposition right-wingers from tearing down the right-hand side. And Brown is one of those options that I think would be fairly cheap as well. He's 27 years old. He's been in the Championship for a little while now. He's not somebody that is going to cost 10 or 15 million pounds. If there's one thing I've learned over the last few years as an Ipswich Town fan, it's the fact that some of the transfers that we make that are less off-your-seat signings and sort of some of the cheaper ones are the ones that turn out to be the best. Just take Massimo Luongo for an example there. But Brown for me is a solid signing if we look to go down that route, and he's somebody that I think would just really help the squad in terms of balance and certainly would provide a really good option as and when we needed it at either left centre-back or as a left-back. He has also been at Oxford United now since 2022. And, you know, I know he probably loves Oxford United, but also you get to a stage in your career where perhaps you're looking for your next move after being at a club for a little while. And having been there for 3 years now, I do wonder if he is interested in his next challenge. Next up, we've got Mike Penders. Now, it's probably a little bit controversial putting a goalkeeper on here because I think there's a lot of love for Christian Walton, and believe me, nobody loves Christian Walton more than I do. The thing that makes me think that we need a new goalkeeper is the fact that Alex Palmer and Christian Walton are very similar. And I know really when it comes to football that actually the goalkeeper is probably the position where you need least variation in profile. But when I looked to the season we got promoted before and we had the option of Christian Walton in goal or Václav Hladky, they were two very different goalkeepers. Václav Hladky was somebody that was incredible at playing out from the back and perhaps not as good of a shot stopper as Christian Walton, but somebody that was capable of playing under pressure. And if I'm being honest, I don't think that's either Palmer's or Walton's strength. It is the strength of Mike Penders, who is currently on loan at Strasbourg from Chelsea. He's only 20 years old, a Belgian player as well, and I just think that he'd be a really good addition if we was able to pull it off, which would be really difficult because, of course, he is on loan over in Ligue 1 at the minute, and it would take Chelsea calling him back and us obviously putting in a significant bid. But I think back to goalkeepers that we've signed in recent years, and it was obviously an area we were looking at improving because we went and got Norwich at the start of the Premier League season. And for whatever reason that didn't work out, people questioned his attitude, his determination in an Ipswich Town shirt. He's doing really well on loan elsewhere at the minute over in Italy, and he's doing a terrific job. But Penders matches a similar profile to him, which tells me that he matches a similar profile to what the club are looking for. Just perhaps Norwich wasn't the right personality for Ipswich Town, and that's not to dig at him, but that's sometimes just what happens in football. And for me, Mike Penders would be a really solid shout if we were looking to experiment with a new style of goalkeeper. Moving on, I'm going to suggest Lawrence Shankland. Okay, again, not the most exciting, get off your seat signing, not the biggest household name. But I was trying to think again comparatively to 2 years ago. In that second half of the season, we signed Kiefer Moore on loan, and he was a completely different profile of striker to what we had had at the club. We had obviously George Hurst there at that time, and we signed Ali Al-Hamadi in the same window as well. But Kiefer Moore was very different to both of those two in the sense that he wasn't somebody that was going to try and get in behind. He was somebody that was going to hold up the ball, but most of all, he was just a complete threat in the box, and that was exactly what he was there to do. Pretty much stand there on the penalty spot and wait for the ball to come to him. And I see similar things to Shankland in that regard. And I was looking at sort of lower end Premier League strikers, top-end Championship strikers that Town could realistically sign this window. And there weren't massive names jumping out to me. So I cast the net a bit wider and looked over to the Scottish Premiership. And that's where I saw Shankland. And obviously he scored a lot of goals for Hearts over the last couple of seasons. I think the stat is something like 63 goals in 120 games at the time of recording, which is a very good return over a couple of seasons. And he clearly knows where the back of the net is. And this isn't necessarily going to be a signing that I think would last years and years and years. And he doesn't have to be here for 5 years. And I sometimes think that with our transfer recruitment, we always look at young players at developing them, but sometimes it is about the here and now. And I do think Shankland is somebody that could contribute over the next 6 months and contribute to getting Town on a really big run that helps us to climb the table massively. And his goals could be very important in the second half of this season. He's also a Scotland international, so there'd be that rivalry with George Hurst, of course, going into the World Cup, who would start up front for Scotland, but they'd have obviously had the rivalry beforehand of who will start for Ipswich Town. But it could help them both in the long run as well. I don't know how realistic this is, just on the basis that Hearts are currently top of the Scottish Premiership, Celtic behind them by 4 points. You do wonder if Celtic are going to catch up there. But yeah, it's a big season for Hearts and a big moment. Would they want to let their talesman go? He scored 7 goals already this season so far, so it's a really interesting one. But if they were to let him go, I can't see it costing any more than £10 million. So let's wait and see on that one, but it's certainly one that I would be very interested in. Okay, and the final one on the list then is Josh Sargent. And this is one that is on the thumbnail. This is probably the reason you clicked on it and would be the Hollywood signing of the January window, if you like, if it was to happen. And it's a bit speculative. And the only reason I suggest it is because, of course, in the summer, that forbidden door between Ipswich and Norwich was blown wide open with the sale of Marcelino Núñez. And if I was Mark Ashton, I would just be testing the waters here because Josh Sargent does match exactly the profile of striker that Ciaran McKenna looks for. Somebody that's physical, got a bit of pace to them, can get in behind and score all kinds of goals. He's a classic number 9, somebody that's proven at Championship level, scored over 50 goals for Norwich, albeit that first season in the Premier League wasn't great, but that's a few seasons ago now, and he has flourished as a player since then. So it'd be very interesting to see if that's somebody that Ciaran McKenna is interested in. And I do think that the striker department is somewhere we will be looking to strengthen this summer, not to discredit George Hurst, but just to give him a bit of help as well. And obviously Azon hasn't probably kicked on at the rate that McKenna hoped as of yet, but I just think the two of them could do with an extra, well, I was going to say an extra pair of hands, but we're talking about football here, so an extra pair of feet. But yeah, I think Josh Sargent would be a terrific signing. I do wonder if it will happen. And he was linked with a lot of Premier League clubs at the start of the season. Leeds obviously going up last season. They liked the look of Sargent, but he decided to stay because he wondered what Norwich would be like under Liam Manning. I think he expected them to do a lot better. They do now have Philippe Clement in charge, who is a proven manager sort of over in Scotland and has so far done a relatively decent job since taking over at Carrow Road. So I do wonder if he might sort of try and stick around with them. But it would be very interesting to see what happens if Town were to test the waters and possibly sign their second Norwich player of the season. So let's wait and see what happens on that one. And also tell me what you think about the prospect of Josh Sargent signing. Would that be something that interests you, or are you still very much like, no, you can't cross the border even after Marcelino Nunes did in the summer? And also, whilst you're there, just tell me sort of who you would like to see Ipswich Town sign this January. But those are 5 suggestions from me, purely speculative. Absolutely nothing to go on to suggest that there's any links to any of those. Just my opinion and a bit of fun ahead of the winter transfer window that, as I say, is less than a month away. So thank you very much for watching and keep on keeping on.